So I'll introduce myself. My name is Max Shelkoff, and I'm a senior mobile solutions consultant with Engage by Cell. And my role here is to kind of help assist all of our different customers and people interested in technology within kind of the workforce world and how mobile communications can be integrated into processes and things like that. And I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself, Mike, and then I'll have Anna give a little shout out to her too there.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, first of all, Max, and my friends at Engage by Cell, Anna and Dave and everybody else over there on the team. I'm Mike Fazio. I'm the CEO at Workforce 180. Thanks for having us.
Perfect. Yeah. And behind the scenes, we've got Anna, our marketing director, who will be running the slides for Mike and I, and she'll also be addressing any questions that people have in the little chat window there. So please participate during the conversation Mike and I are having. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in there, raise your hand, whatever it might be. All righty, Anna, next slide, pretty please. All right, so a little bit about Engage by Cell. So we are a mobile device-based technology company that primarily focuses on how engagement can power communications and ease of access for information. And we have a large presence within the workforce development and training and HR realm, how we help assist and increase those communication levels and retain it, and obviously get that information that everybody needs access to out there to the public. And so next slide, Anna, and we'll let Mike talk about Workforce 180 a little bit.
Thanks, Max. Hi again, everybody. Mike Fazio, Workforce 180. We're a national training and consulting organization. We've been around since 2014. I've been part of the industry since 2008. I'm looking, Max, at the chat board at all the different places from around the country that are here, and including beyond the state borders. The U.S., we've got the U.S. Virgin Islands, we've got the Grand Cayman Islands with us as well.
Exciting. So
it's interesting to see how Workforce stretches across the country and beyond. And that's what we've been trying to do to help organizations. We've contracted with more than 700, whether they're government agencies, nonprofits, workforce agencies, workforce boards all over the country, including the Virgin Islands, including the Cayman Islands, including Canada, including parts of Australia. And we're proud to say we've been able to assist with professional development with more than 20,000 workforce professionals. And on top of that, one of the other things we do is podcasting. And podcasting is near and dear to our hearts. We edit, produce, and distribute podcasts for workforce agencies and the private sector all over the country. And very proud to say we've now accumulated more than 2 million downloads. If you're not podcasting, folks, I don't know what you're waiting. I don't know what you're waiting for.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And Mike had mentioned we got some visitors from the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we'll be talking about kind of a shared experience we have down there. So glad to see some of them participating today.
Absolutely.
Yep. So these are just some the different organizations and workforce boards that Engage by Cell specifically works with throughout the nation, and a little bit international there as well. All right. So tell me a little bit here, Mike. I know you wanted to include this, but labor force participation rate. So can you elaborate on this and kind of what the surprising statistics are here before we kind of dive in?
Yeah, I mean, this is coming up more and more often. Everybody in the country knows that we're having a downturn in foot traffic through our centers around the country. Maybe less people looking for work, less people wanting help and assistance. We're writing less ITAs, less OJTs. And this should not be a shock to us, though, because if you look at the labor participation rate, which is the percentage of people working or actively looking for work in the country, it's been in decline since March of 2000. Now, the bottom fell out during COVID, and we're kind of creeping back up to where we were. But since there are more people becoming independent, self-employed, multiple part-time job, doing all kinds of other work. I mean, there is no reason for us to be shocked that less people are coming through the door. We had a slight blip on the screen in 2008, right? And 9 during the recession when unemployment was through the roof. But ever since then, I don't see any reason that this is going to change. So we as workforce organizations need to change. We've got to start adapting to the fact that there are going to be less people working by the definition of work probably every year for quite a while.
Yeah. So I think that goes along with kind of what the whole message of this kind of talk that you and I are going to have today is, don't be shocked. It's more of, adapt, is kind of the thing here, where things have already, as you can see within that trend line there, they've already changed, and now it's kind of either, if you haven't caught up, what are the challenges and how are we going to get caught up is kind of my interpretation of it,
Yeah, very much. Yeah. The old days of labor participation rate growth, like we saw in the 70s, especially in 80s, as more and more women were coming into the workplace, especially, we kind of peaked out and now we're going to deal with the way it is.
Yeah. And I think it is a very unique time, especially coming from more of like a technology standpoint. Technology has enabled many people to kind of get out on their own and start doing their own thing. And it's also kind of bridged a lot of communication gaps within this workforce and the people trying to assist and provide resources and all those things too. So Anna, would you mind clicking to the next slide, pretty please? And so we're going to discuss some of the biggest hurdles here, and you'll see a poll pop up here. Now, please answer as many of these as you want. So it's not just a one answer kind of thing, but we wanted to kind of start out with what you anticipate your biggest hurdles of 2023 will be. And like I said, more than one answer can apply. And obviously, Mike and I talked about the statistics before, kind of what challenges you see in this upcoming new year. So we'll give you a little second here. Do you have any ideas or comments about any of those selections there, Mike? Are you going to fill it out too? I'm going to.
Well, I can't. I was going to do it, Max, but it says host and panelists cannot vote. So I guess we're being excluded. But I think we're going to see population in all of these boxes. I have a feeling it probably depends on what type of organization you're working with, whether you're urban, suburban, rural, how big your organization is, but I'm sure funding is going to be a concern.
Funding is always a concern. And I feel like a lot of times in workforce development, these challenges are kind of associated with each other too at the same time, so if one box is checked, that probably means one or two other boxes are checked. And the positive thing with that though is oftentimes, obviously there'll be multiple solutions to issues, but that kind of means that you can mediate these issues in the same way, where if you get one box checked that, okay, we're good to go against that challenge, that means a couple more of those boxes are also going to be checked. So what do we got here? Compromised funding and a decrease in outcomes. Interesting. That's a interesting one there. What do you think about that high level on the decreased outcomes there, Mike?
Well, that's not the stat. That's not the stat that jumps out at me. Believe it or not, the stat that jumps out at me is going to be brand degradation, because I feel that that's going to be I think that would be in my world the number one answer, and I'll explain why as we go through this.
Okay, interesting. I think the compromised funding and the decrease in outcomes are just like I mentioned, one of those things that are kind of going to go hand in hand, so it's one of those deals. Anna, would you mind keep going forward for us here, pretty please?
Funding is going to be impactful as the new budget year comes upon us in July, and people very soon are going to start preparing their budgets. And it's a lot of it's going to be tied into foot traffic. A lot of it's going to be tied into what was accomplished, what trends are happening, and thus organizations are preparing for that, whether it's youth programs, reentry programs, or any other program out there. And I think when it says up there, Max, the diminished integrity, I think part of that challenge and that stigma that we're going to fight as the unemployment office from an employer side of things is that employers, well, let's look at it this way, as workforce organizations for years, we've wanted employers to notice us and work with us and engage with us. And we finally got our wish come true because employers have struggled to find workers and they've become desperate, so desperate that they've started reaching out to workforce centers. They've started answering phone calls, replying to emails. And now we are kind of stuck between that rock and a hard place because as much as we want to help them, we haven't been able to provide many times that qualified worker that the employer is looking for. So while they're finally asking us for help, if we can't help them, I think that's gonna cause the integrity of the organization and the brand to experience that degradation that we were pointing to in the polls. It's a crucial time for workforce organizations to step up their game.
Yeah, and I think going on to the next bullet point there too, limited accessibility to your resources is one of those big challenges associated with that brand too, because there are so many amazing resources out there, right? And they're associated with your brand. Like it's help, it's resources available to people. And that's, in my opinion, the largest hurdle that I see time and time again, coming from a technology standpoint, of all of these resources and just people don't know about them.
Yeah, I mean, knowing about them is one thing. Using it is the other thing. Sometimes workforce, I feel, is a couple of years behind what's happening out there in the private sector, and it's really through no fault of the organization. Sometimes there's, as you well know, Max, a lot of red tape to get things advanced from a technology standpoint. We used to joke around years ago with business service reps and saying, how would you all like an iPad to go out into the field and talk to employers? And, you'd have to get 50 signatures to get one iPad. And now it's kind of a standard in the business for everybody to have iPads and go out there and do their work. Floppy disks were still being used back in 2008. Facebook was still being blocked. Blows my mind today that every workforce youth program in the country is not using TikTok as a means to recruit and outreach to young people.
So that's going to your point of utilizing those resources.
Absolutely.
Internally or externally. I mean, there's so many different resources not only available to those job seekers, but to workforce development boards that need to start utilizing resources for that community outreach.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yep. And somebody pointed out that TikTok was banned in their area, which I understand to a degree, but there's also Instagram and YouTube and all the other things that you can be using. The other platforms I just mentioned, TikTok was one example. Example.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's don't negate the power of social media ever, because that was one thing where even as a younger person, from my perspective, I didn't see necessarily the huge immense value of it until I got into kind of the outreach side of things and discovered just how powerful it really is. And I think TikTok's an interesting use case for sure. But
I know I fall down that TikTok rabbit hole just about every night. You go on the intention of watching one or two things, and next thing you know, an hour has gone by. So I can understand why some places have some banned that. But it's not just using those platforms, Max. It's using them consistently, using them effectively in a way that makes your organization really be unique and stand out and be different, and not just post hot jobs up on Facebook. That's that's not using the power of social media. Are you doing Facebook Live? Are you doing remotes? Are you doing things that are engaging and attracting all community members? I mean, that phrase outside the box is so overused, but we right now as an industry, I keep saying it, are at a crossroads, and we better step up our game in 2023. I fear we would become more and more irrelevant to employers if we're not finding ways to attract more people and attract more partnerships.
Yeah, and that's a great segue kind of for the tools that Engage by Sell provides. I mean, texting, going back to just a simple idea, is that some people haven't adopted text messaging as a form of communication within, kind of the business realm, where we all know, hey, phone calls don't work as well as they used to. Obviously, people vet out phone calls more so than they ever used to.
Yeah.
They don't recognize that number, they're not necessarily going to pick up that phone. And also, it's obviously a big time consuming factor to make these phone calls to tens, dozens, hundreds of people. And then obviously the open read respond rate behind text messages, you're getting that message to their palm instantaneously. So I think that's something we're definitely going to talk about here moving forward as well. But just, I think to Mike's point, there's so many tools out there that are underutilized and inconsistently utilized. So
And that's part of that brand degradation that we're talking about, and that, I think, impacts us being viewed as the unemployment office, which is the phrase we used in the 70s, right? That's what it was called. And, we're still trying to break away from that. And I think the more we demonstrate our innovation, the more we demonstrate, like you said earlier, our adaptation to the way the world works today and communicates today and lives today, will increase our brand awareness. I always joke around with this one example, is that, if you're in the supermarket and there's a can of soup on the shelf that's dented. And you see that often, I'm sure, Max, when you're in the supermarket, if a dented can of soup there, I know what happens. You don't pick up the dented can of soup. You pick up the other can of soup that's not dented. It's got the same good stuff on the inside, but it looks worse. So I'm going to take the one that's not dented. And I fear sometimes that we are looked at as the dented soup can when it comes to placement, when it comes to training, when it comes to partnerships, when it comes to funding, when it comes to community empowerment, things like that. And I think how we represent ourselves, how we speak, how we communicate makes a difference in our brand. And there's some great organizations that are doing great things out there that are making a significant impact in their community, that are decreasing the brand degradation that's out there and increasing the brand awareness.
Awesome. Yeah. Anna, would you mind going to the next slide so we can kind of talk about some of these cliches like Mike had just kind of mentioned there about the unemployment office, right? That you were just kind of discussing in the 1970s and what some of those differences are. Just go ahead and roll out all the bulletin points and we'll just go at it here, Anna.
Yeah, I've been in the field so many times with business service reps and sat with case managers around the country, and that perception by employers that we're only assisting low wage, low income, low educated people, as opposed to using the reality of it, and that our databases around the country are filled with people from GEDs to PhDs. I mean, there are significant, I know in the Virgin Islands, actually, they had a job fair last week. An engineer was hired at a hiring event. An engineer hired on the spot at a hiring event. So that whole stigma of blue collar only or uneducated only is just not true.
And I think that it's easily measurable, and I think we all know it. It's especially with younger demographics too. Like, people remain competitive in the job market all the time. Just because you fall into that, I got a career placement, they want to remain in these databases just because they want to know and seek out maybe that next best opportunity. And I see it all the time with our text messaging platform, where people used to get placed into a career and then they would choose to opt out of that contact list, right? But now they're choosing to opt in and stay in that because they want to stay in the know of what the next career fair is going to be, what the next, and these are all, to your point, all different kinds of mid-level, high-level career options, and things like that. But it's really interesting to kind of see, and kind of a personal story, is my wife works in recruitment, and she sees that all the time, where in the back they used to place an individual and move on, and now they are continuously contacting people they've already placed into careers to see if they're interested and the next stepping stone,
Yeah.
so it's something that's very real out there.
Well, I think that's part of the work too. And the bullet says it right there. Client, placing your client does not conclude the work, doesn't conclude the work with that employer, doesn't conclude the work with that client. The retention really matters today. There's reasons to contact that employer about incumbent worker training or their other hiring needs. It's inevitable an organization is going to have turnover or need to do some skilling up. So that relationship component is crucial. And I will say, Max, since 2008, I've watched a dramatic increase in organizational awareness and organizational efforts and organizational advancement in this industry. And, I think folks should be applauded for that. However, I still think we have a ways to go. And this time in our crazy economic and political climate that we live and work in every day, that kind of confusion out there, I think, is creating a whole lot of opportunity. And I encourage
100%.
every organization to keep making every effort to being relevant in the eyes of their community.
For sure. Absolutely. Anna, would you mind? So we've kind of talked about the cliches and what the challenges are. Now we kind of want to talk about some of these new perspectives that you can, adjust to and jump into, including technology and partnership building and all these different things. And you see a poll jump up on your screen here. We're a couple of easy little questions where I'm curious to see what the definition of a job and the definition of a career are for different individuals, because that's a question that we run into quite a bit. What is the difference between a job and a career? And I'm curious to see. And Mike, what do you think? What do you think participants are looking for a job? And that kind of goes with the argument of, are people nowadays looking at everything like a job, or are they still looking for that career? Are they married to a career? Is it just a job to me? What's kind of the difference there?
I really think it depends on the generation. It's quite true that the younger generation, the Gen Y, the Gen Z, I think that they have a different set of aspirations than people who might be at my stage of life as a baby boomer. Things were different for me getting out of school. The dream was to get a job, stay there forever, buy a house, picket fence, 2 kids, a dog, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see that as the most common goal in mind for young people. They're more inclined to want to make a difference in the world, want to make an impact on society. And, you're going to need money you're going to need to make money to do all the other things in life too. And I think they're finding that out as well.
Absolutely. That's interesting. All right. Did everybody get an opportunity here? And we can close that.
Yeah, let's see some answers.
Yeah. All right.
Most people looking for a job, not a surprise.
Not a surprise either. Yeah. And then the long answers, we can definitely share some of those long answers at the poll we're in. And then
that'd be good to share with the audience afterwards. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And it's interesting because I think you're right, Mike, in the sense that a lot of younger people are looking for a job, but I think it's kind of going back to what is the definition, and that's more of what I'm intrigued for and looking forward to share some of those. But kind of some solutions here, I think, community outreach is your specialty in a lot of different ways, Mike. And you and I have worked on some projects together with community outreach that kind of talk about how important it is to the process and some of the different tools you've utilized. And then I really want you to touch on skilling up too, because I hear you mention that all the time. So I definitely want to give you the window to talk about skilling up for us.
Yeah. I think the industry's evolved to the point where it's no longer business outreach anymore or client outreach. Now it's the entire community. Who and how many can we touch and how often in our community in every way, shape, or form, whether it's at the mall, whether it's at a school, whether it's at a place of worship, wherever people congregate are the people we should be serving. There's something for everybody in the community that your local workforce center can assist with. And I am seeing more organizations focus their outreach efforts in that way. I'm not sure I see enough, though. I still see too many business service reps that are sticking with the same 3 or 4 employers they've always worked with. They're not
Right.
venturing out into the areas where it's more challenging. The obstacles are bigger, but I also believe the business opportunity is bigger. You know, I think that, you know, folks like Target and Home Depot and other major players, they know the workforce system inside out. They know exactly how to take advantage of all the things that are being offered, but it's that small to mid-sized business that doesn't know and that needs the help. So I think I'd encourage that. Skilling up, whether they're incumbent workers, whether they're underemployed workers, whether you're the frontline staff member, you know, improving your ability to deliver results, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, Max, is delivering those results. That's really where I think we can do a lot more as organizations in this industry. I go to a lot of conferences. I speak at a lot of conferences. People get excited when there's workshops and professional development opportunities. I could tell you for Workforce 180, our Workforce Professional Certification Series has seen a significant jump in enrollments for our online courses, especially since the pandemic hit, especially since times became more challenging. So it is good to see that organizations are trying to get better, because what you learned and look at it this way, what I learned in the 80s, most of it is irrelevant right now in the world that we work in. It's just irrelevant. It was great to experience it, but much of what I did back then makes no difference in the world today. And I think a lot of people have to look at that themselves.
Super interesting. And I think that goes along, obviously, it's just because technology plays such an important part in this as well. And how fast does technology evolve? You know, so you're going to see technology evolving every single quarter almost, and then you're going to see kind of the ways that you have to approach the contact methods and the engagement and the accessibility and all of that stuff has to adapt is as quick as a rate as possible just to keep up with that. I mean, just pointing out what you just said, you know, in the 80s, is it relevant today? Probably not, you know. So
probably not.
Yeah.
But the collaboration bullet down there, Max, I think is a good segue to start talking about the different ways we all collaborated and different organizations we collaborated on for a project in the U.S. Virgin Islands with the Department of Labor down there. Do you want to jump onto that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, look at those pictures. Holy cow. I didn't know that was going to pop up. All right. So on the left of your screen, that's the governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, which has beautiful beaches, blue water, everything you could imagine. They have high unemployment. They have violence. They have gangs. They have issues. However, what they also have is high tourism. They stayed open during the pandemic, and their tourism rates are higher than they've ever been before. Try booking a hotel or a flight down there right now. It's not cheap because everything is sold out. But the governor himself has a workforce summit every year. And every year, more and more people are attending. And this year, more people than ever attended. And, you know, you'll see Max there and I on a seaplane, which is how you get from St. Thomas to St. Croix and vice versa. And if you don't know Max, he's 6'9", and getting him on that 10-seat airplane was the thrill of the week for me. But by collaborating, Max, you know, we were able to accomplish a lot of things. Workforce 180, Engage by Cell, ICF, Equus Workforce Solutions, and others were involved in making this event as successful as possible. It took months of planning, months of coordination, but it worked. The event was sold out on St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John, and we'll be doing it again next year. I know that for sure. And it was that combined efforts of email, of texting, of social media, of radio ads, bullying our way onto TV shows and other things, ways of billboards, electronic billboards. We did everything in our power to make that happen. And
I think you'd mentioned it right at the beginning, but how much more successful was in 2022 than year prior? Do you remember
for the governor's summit? For the governor's summit, it was triple the attendance.
Triple the attendance, and I think the main factor there is due to community outreach and collaboration. I think you
100%.
nailed it there. So that is, going to be the main takeaway from kind of that perspective. In my sense is we all collaborated together, and that was one of the very first kind of large scale collaboration efforts that I had been a part of, thanks to you kind of getting me involved with it and everything. But it was amazing to see all of these different organizations coming together as one, whereas normally with workforce development, I kind of see everybody feels like they're on this floating island, not talking about Virgin Islands, but they feel alone in that sense, where there are so many different resources like Workforce 180 and Engage by Cell and other platforms out there that can definitely collaborate, and we're all open to it. Don't be afraid to kind of bridge that gap. It's not a lot of times one or the other. Everybody can bring something very interesting, powerful to the table. And that's what I was really intrigued to see. And it was obviously very, very successful.
Well, it's the first time we introduced texting as a communication method in the Virgin Islands, and I've been doing work down there since 2009. And I really do give credit to using that platform that you provided to getting more and more people to attend. It really worked out fantastic. I think you have a screenshot of that, don't you, on one of these slides? So like an example of what the
and we can
what the texting would look like. Yeah.
So I'll talk about kind of the two different platforms that we utilize down there. So we had the mobile web app, and then we had the text messaging platform. Now, the mobile web app is a simple URL-based tool that looks, feels, and acts just like in an application, a native app that you would download from an app store. But again, it's all URL-based, so there is no download barrier. And I think that assists a lot, especially in unique kind of places like the U.S. Virgin Islands, or really anywhere where, access to information is a huge part of the challenge, where you can just utilize the text messaging to send out a text with a little clickable link. And to get an example of what this looks like, if everybody wants to text Max to 56512, real quick, you'll get a text message back kind of showing you what this looks like firsthand.
That's good.
Or you can scan that QR code. So they can be accessed either way there, but I always highly encourage people to do the text messaging because of that open read respond rate that I mentioned way earlier. On the greatest successful email chain you can push out, it's going to be like a 10% success rate as far as open read and response, right? Versus text messaging, to Mike's point, why it was so successful, is around 95%, especially with some of the unique challenges like the U.S. Virgin Islands have of, it's not only some of these kind of violence and income inequality.
Plus, it's three different islands. I mean, geographically,
I was going to say geographic challenges are a whole other ballpark. So
they do a great job down there. They really do. They make every effort to achieve outcomes.
And it was very, very, very successful. Now, what's kind of moving forward with the collaborations, I definitely see kind of the success pending more on the mobile web app as well, because it was kind of a last minute jump call to action. But I'm going to see these mobile web apps transition to a super powerful tool, I think, moving forward because of the access of information. Imagine having a tool where you can update it on the fly, where versus having a native app or a website that you have to go through all these different channels to make a change happen, right? Sometimes in workforce development, changes happen fast, and so you can on the fly update that information.
I'm actually, hey, Max, I'm going to pop up the QR code directly to the site just in case any folks not in the US can't access it via text. 1 second.
Yeah, no problem at all. I see we got, for Canadians, that's a good point there, Dave. I appreciate that for sure. Now, you utilize a mobile web app, don't you, Mike?
We do. Yeah, we do very successfully in the USVI. We get more and more enrollments every week, and we're utilizing it for everything from hot jobs to events, workshops that are happening out there. We poll people. We alert them to to the Virgin Islands Employment Workforce System, which is where they can register themselves and look for jobs. But it's just one example. I mean, it's such a versatile way to engage the community, and they've really responded to it. They really have.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and it's a super powerful tool from that standpoint of ease of access. I can't say it enough. That is the biggest challenge that I see, and not to pick on workforce development boards or organizations, but oftentimes, like Mike had mentioned, a lot of it's just red tape. But some of the websites I see out there, due to the fact that there is so many resources and information that you're responsible for getting out to the people, the website isn't the most user friendly by any means, you know. So these can really help consolidate kind of the key tools that people have out there, and tools for yourself as well, where you can have like Mike's usage there with your hot jobs. And I even see people have resume uploading is an option on there, and I see people use it for job verification processes as well. So obviously that's a huge challenge for everybody involved when, you know, kind of the end of the road there and they need to verify that employment. If you could just imagine sending a text with a link to someone that can capture that information instantaneously, whether it be a pay stub or, you know, just a picture of their employment paperwork, or there's many different things that other organizations have to access. But super easy tool, super powerful from that standpoint. Anything you want to add about kind of mobile web or mobile technology there, Mike?
No, I'm good. Let's wind it down, see if there's any audience questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, we got.
All right, so Mike says,
your
okay.
final thoughts.
Oh, look at that. My final thoughts. All right. Well, I like that. Well, listen, folks, you know, I'm being a little dramatic here when I say we need an extreme industry makeover. We have to really make this a year of opportunity for workforce development. The following year will be an election year. This is a year that I think we get to add some clarity to what workforce really looks like, how we can create partnerships with employers, how we can go deeper into our communities. You know, I was talking to a youth program manager, Karen Reed, at the Susquehanna Workforce Network in Hartford County in Maryland, and you know, they're part of a state of Maryland blueprint program, and she's been going to schools to create relationships with students at younger ages. So we're not waiting for them to get to graduation and decide, what should I do? Technical career, higher education at a college, whatever it might be. You know, that opportunity to really start working with elementary, middle school, and high schoolers is going to pay off down the road.
Yeah.
Because if we can't truly overnight fix the way things are today, the more we delay dealing with the younger people, the more we're delaying long-term outcomes. So I urge workforce leaders out there, if any of you are on this event today, to really go beyond your comfort zone and really consider upskilling your workforce professionals. Really consider, how can I improve their ability to deliver outcomes, to communicate effectively with people in today's world and today's landscape. That's going to be crucial. We really need an opportunity to help our frontline staff to make sure that they're equipped to overcome the obstacles that they have. Max, I always say, give people what they need to know, but in a way they want to hear it. Not everybody in your community wants to hear OJT and SNAP and TANF and that. Forget that stuff. Get out there and explain it to them in simple English. Yeah. We have to stop being so government and so red tape and so gray and so beige. We need more purple in the world, Max. We need more color out there when it comes to who we are and what we do. Yeah. And I know it's not the easiest thing, but I think if we put our purple hats on, at least that's a start. And then I always say that it takes a revolution to initiate evolution. And I think right now we're in a worker revolution. Workers are revolting and saying, I want this. I won't settle for that. And employers have been forced to change. Nowadays, the candidate interviews the employer as much as the employer interviews the candidate. And I think that's good coaching by our facilitators and our case managers and our job coaches out there to do that, because employers have awakened, I believe, and believe more than ever that the employee is crucial, more crucial than ever to their success, and holding on to them is more important than ever.
That's
So.
I love that. I haven't heard you say the revolution to initiate evolution. That's a amazing little tidbit there. I'm going to use that moving forward in the future there.
It's all yours. Go for it.
Yeah. Now this is a kind of the time for a little Q&A. If anybody has any questions for Mike or myself, feel free to throw it in that chat group there, and we can address them here for a couple minutes. And then at the end, we have a slide with Mike and I's information and kind of the call to action for next steps if you do have questions or things like that. So
the question everybody should be asking, Max, is where do I start? How do I start? How do I make this happen?
That's exactly right.
I mean,
That's
come on,
exactly
let's
right.
go, people. Let's wake up. Let's do it.
And it's something that Mike and I can just share with you from what we see work and what doesn't work too. You know, it doesn't have to be a demonstration or anything. It can be, you know, simply what works and what is working. But here we go. What are some ways you would get people on board with using social media who are very hesitant?
What people, Susie? What people are you talking about? Clients? Or are you talking about your organization?
Managers. Okay, so internally. I think there are some pretty easy statistics you can throw out there for them, Susie, as far as engagement rates and things like that. Mike, what advice do you have? You run a
Max,
podcast.
in the 80s, Max, you know what I used to do for engagement? I'd walk in my door in New York City and go knock on 50 doors a day with a pocket full of dimes so I can make calls back to the office using a payphone to check on my messages. I mean, come on, this doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So whether it's social media, whether it's email blasts, whether it's texting platforms, whatever way, shape, and form you can engage with people out there, it's got to happen for the workforce leaders, the managers, the directors, the executive directors, the CEOs. Folks, wake up. Private sector businesses have been doing this for years and years.
Yep.
You know, that's why I'm blown away, Max, and you probably hear the same thing when people say, well, we're not going to be texting people. People don't want more text than they already get. I hear the same thing when it comes to podcasting. Oh, we don't have time for podcasting. Podcasting takes 30 minutes a month.
Yeah.
You know, and I still see people writing 10,000 word newsletters out there that nobody reads. Yeah. In fact, I proved it that nobody reads. We used to send a newsletter, and in one of our newsletters, because I was convinced nobody read it, in the newsletter, it said, first person to email Mike, hello, gets a free iPad. I'm still waiting for somebody to send me an email. Don't send it now, though, because that offer is expired. But nobody read the newsletter. 34% of people in America are auditory learners. They listen. That's why podcasts, there's 100 million listens a week. But enough about that. Using modern day platforms like texting are going to make a difference in your organizational outcomes. There is no argument there. You cannot argue that statistic.
I think it's just the kind of the beginning there. We talked about it. The more tools you have, the better. You know, it's not why limit yourself in any way, shape, or form if you can have 25 tools of engagement at your disposal, but you only choose to use one. Why would you do that? You know, it's a limitation that you're putting upon your organization for, you know, no reason. And you can't say, oh, well, we tried it, you know. Well, if you haven't even tried it, then how do you know?
You got to commit. You got to commit. Trying just isn't an option anymore. Now you have to commit to it. You've got to commit to things. You've got to commit to it and do everything in your power to make it work. I see a question from Tanya who says, you indicate a need to upskill workforce professionals. What particular set of skills do you think are needed going forward? I'll tell you, all the courses we offer have a common theme through them, depending on what the course title is, whether it's case management certification or business services or motivational interviewing. And that theme is really focused on communication skills. I really believe that's what makes the world go round. And we're all good at sending messages. We know people receive those messages, but I know for a fact not a lot of people understand the messages they're getting, and that's the key. How are you putting information out there so people understand it and will take action so you ultimately get the results that you want? So I believe in any kind of course learning out there that's associated with your work is going to be a benefit to you in one way, shape, or form. I always tell people, Max, I can't promise you 100% of what's in one of our courses is going to help you, but there's something in there that will.
Right.
And that one thing might help you assist one more client, which ultimately makes a difference.
100%. 100%.
What else do we have here? How to build bridges with employers to realize the very untapped potential of persons with disabilities in the workplace. We have a ways to go. We have a long ways to go. We have a long ways to go. And I respect each group of people with barriers that are represented out there, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's returning citizens, whether it's youth, whether it's older workers, dislocated workers. Everybody has a passion to represent their people. The best bit of advice I could give you out there is remember, everybody is pushing their particular client to the employer, explaining the benefits that that client offers. You have to be the best at doing that. And again, that ties into your professional development.
All right. Let's see. Do you think there are any social media platforms that communicators in our function should avoid for the sake of credibility? Example, Snapchat. I think kind of going back and also maybe from a younger perspective, no offense, Mike, but
trying to call me old, Max?
But just from a younger perspective, I think credibility isn't necessarily as much as an issue as it is what you use it for. You know, you can establish the credibility yourself with any platform, depending on what content you put out there. You know, it's really majority of the major social media platforms that are out there, they're billion-dollar industries. You know, these aren't little tech startup firms that are, you know, going to be utilized. These Snapchat, Twitter, all these giant companies already have enough credibility themselves. It's going to be what content you're providing on these platforms that are going to assign the credibility to it. And some older demographics and things like that might view some of them as silly, but they're not getting billions of users every single day from not having credibility.
Hey, look, I'm the older demographic, and I check all those social media platforms out. It's all research for work, though, Max. You know, I got to tell you, that's what I'm using it for.
Yep,
but there's some really good stuff. People are so darn creative. That there's got to be a way to use that creativity and channel it towards employment. And I think that's where the untapped talent pool is out there. I am just blown away by the creativity of the people that put content out there. And if you go to any of those social media platforms and type in the word workforce, you'll find like-minded organizations that are putting out, like you said, Max, credible content, which is improving their brand to the community members that they serve.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I agree. And Kim said it can be overwhelming, and I'm not doubting that at all, for sure. But here's Mike and I's information, and definitely reach out if you want to have a conversation. Obviously, I'm more from a technology perspective and how that can be utilized within your development board or your organization or whomever you're, you know, communicating with and who your target audience is. I can talk about our platforms and what other, you know, technologies out there that we see help engage individuals and get that audience to not only see the information, but respond to it, engage with it, you know, create that channel that's two-way and not just one way of pushing information. You want it back.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't get that information and that reciprocation back, then it's a moot point, you know. So that's what I specialize in and how to drive that engagement process. And Mike, go ahead. You know, that's your information as well. Tell a little bit about what you can communicate.
Yeah, no, reach out, folks. You know, happy to have a discussion with anybody about anything at any time. So don't hesitate. If you don't reach out, I'll probably see you at an upcoming conference. I'll be at SETA, NAWP, the Ohio State Conference, and so on and so forth. This starting in February through the end of May, I think, during conference season. So I look forward to meeting you in person, and truly appreciate what you do every day on the front line. Your job is not getting easier every day. It's getting filled with more and more challenges. So persevere, folks. You can overcome those obstacles and still get the outcomes you want and still like what you do, which is ultimately why you took that job in the first place, because you like helping others. So congratulations and thanks for everything you do on the front line.
Thank you, everybody, again. And we'll be definitely sending some emails with the recorded version of what Mike and I discussed today. And then again, feel free to reach out. All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Engage by Cell. And thanks, Anna. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Thanks, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.